Welcome, I'm Britta Merwin, meteorologist at KPRC2 News. I'm honored to be your host for the Avondale House From Our House to Yours virtual event. For 45 years, Avondale House has been a center of hope and opportunity in Houston for people living with autism. It's a place where friendships are made and the foundation for learning begins for so many. It's where every person is given a chance to live their best life and reach their full potential. Avondale House is able to achieve this through its small class sizes, adult day program, residential and employment services, and it's only made possible with your help and community support. As a mother of a son with autism, I understand the heartache many families face when learning about their loved one's diagnosis. I understand the constant worries. Will they get the proper therapy they need? What is their future going to look like? How will I juggle my needs and our family's needs as we navigate it? These are real questions family members of people on the spectrum face every day. These are real questions I've faced since my son was diagnosed at the age of 2. I know it can be frightening, but with your help and support and services like Avondale House, there's hope and there's a brighter future ahead for many individuals living with autism. We can also choose to spread awareness. That's why I'm proud to be an advocate for the autism community. Joining us are some very special guests from across Houston who understand the value of Avondale House and how it continues to help so many in our community. I want to introduce a parent who has seen the impact of Avondale House firsthand. Let's welcome our first guest, Dr. Prima Wachukwu.
Thank you all for having me today. My journey to Avondale started with my son, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 18 months. We've just been through a whole lot with Donald being autistic. Because he cannot be able to express himself, he bangs on the wall, he kicks the bed, he's gone to several schools. And we had a whole series of meetings for his educational plan, and he wasn't really learning the way he should. The teachers asked me if I wanted him to go to a specialized school, and they recommended that he should come to Avondale. And ever since Donald has been in Avondale, it's been a miracle. Donald is now more independent on his own. He takes a shower, he brushes his mouth, he goes to his room. When I tell him, make your bed before you leave and go to school, he does, listen and follow instructions. He can independently sit down, do his classwork, and every paper he brings out, he tells you the name of the teacher that gave him the homework. It's just been like, so where has this Avondale been all these years? I feel a whole lot of pressure relieved on me. It's like as if, something just clicked into Donald's brain. Honestly, I can't say thank you enough, Avondale. I feel so relieved. I feel so happy to have my son as if he's coming back to me.
During my time in college, I heard about autism. It was not something that was readily talked about, but I had the opportunity to study autism in England, and before the United States even was really recognizing it as a diagnosis. This is my 43rd year officially in a classroom. I have a behavior background as well, and so I love the challenge of changing behavior and seeing how you can take a child who has these behaviors that people don't really understand and get them to change it.
And I too knew at a young age that I wanted to be a special education teacher. When I first started, I was volunteering in a hospital on pediatrics, because at that time I thought I wanted to be a nurse or a doctor. Seeing patients that were sick, I had one that was had lost their family in a car accident, and so he was selective mute, and he would not speak to anyone. So one day I decided I was going to throw a little tantrum, and so I just said, "Oh, that's okay, I don't want to play with you either." And he's like, "Calm down." And he came and he grabbed my hand, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, you just have such a way of connecting." For me to see the difference from the first day that they walked in my room and to see them a week later and 2 weeks later, the progress that they have made, to hear parents just feel so good about placing their child here and being comfortable and knowing that their child's needs are being met, to me is very, very rewarding.
I love seeing the progress every day. It's been fun for me because I came from an elementary school. Our principal has allowed me to bring some of the things that we did at the elementary school here. And it's been fun to get the staff involved in those various activities. And the children have really enjoyed it because they're not in a typical setting. And so bringing those to them and letting them see what it's like to participate in those activities. And we get dressed up sometimes and we have themes, and the children really seem to enjoy it. And so it's been really fun. I get up excited to come to work and to see what we can do for the kids today that will help improve their lives and help improve their learning. So it's definitely a challenge, but for me, being able to change behavior is my thing, and so being able to do that every day is just wonderful.
Yes. And I just like the challenge too, because these students are so smart and they are always one step ahead of you. So you have to come with your game on, ready to go. So for me, that's always so exciting. Every morning, I always look forward to the next the next trick that they have up their sleeve.
Right, exactly.
I'll be so focused on something that I'm ready to do, and they will turn it upside down, and they have a lot to teach us as well. And we're always surprised about what they can do. To me, it's also finding that light bulb. It's always like one little spark that will just spark something, and then all of a sudden, this child is speaking, or this child is performing a task that we didn't even know that they could perform.
One of my students is very into science experiments, and he can turn anything into a science experiment. So his favorite thing is slime that ends up in various places, unfortunately. Once we get that over with and he's excited with that, then we can get started with the academics. Some of the children are on a regular curriculum with modifications and accommodations. And so we just have to get them where they are and then provide the materials that they need to learn for that grade level. In the end, that to me, it's all about the child and what the child needs. If the child needs to learn how to count by going outside and jumping, or running laps or bouncing a ball to get them to get into the rhythm and understand it, then that's what we're going to do.
And a lot of times the students with autism, they have their favorite items, and they're only going to work for Batman, or they're only going to work if they see a Pokemon. And so sometimes you have to incorporate those items into the materials so that you can draw them in.
I think one of the biggest things that I have found is really important is structure. And my classroom is very, very structured. It's interesting that they're very comfortable in that and they follow those routines and rules. And when the parents follow them as well, then the progress is even quicker. And I think that we've all learned that children with autism don't like change, but they do like structure. And
we just want everyone to truly just be able to be themselves and to be happy. And like I said, even for us, you never want to be in that state of being frustrated and fighting and being angry. And I see, like, when the students first come to us, they have like 2 or 3 days where they're not really sure and not sure of those behaviors, but that quickly disappears because they realize that they are in a safe environment and that, we are going to accept them for, who they are, where they are, and we're going to build on, their strengths.
And a lot of it is the expectations. If you expect them to behave and to do certain things, they're going to. Maybe not at first, but when you continue to say, this is what I expect, and, I won't accept anything else, then they're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, let's do it that way.
And surprisingly enough, they can do it.
And
they
then they're proud, right?
And they're waiting on you to say, hey, you need to cut that out and do this. They're like, oh, okay, I can do that.
and you're like, yes, that's not going to happen. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they're proud of themselves. And that's what's really fun, is to see them, the joy and the successes.
I don't think a lot of people know a whole lot about what Avondale does, but one thing for me and that I would like the public and everyone to know is that Avondale really is truly a caring environment where the teachers and the staff really are here because they choose to be here, and they have expertise, they have experience, and they want to work with the students, and they believe in each and every child, and that they are not afraid of the children. They're not taken back by any of the behaviors that they've seen, and they truly are accepting of what walks in the door, and we feel empowered to be able to make a difference and to change lives for the better for the students and for the families. Even though they may have autism, first of all, they're students, and these students come with skills, and we build on those skills to make them better so they can go back out and be a contributing source in their community.
Right. Sometimes those skills and those strengths are hidden, and because we're so small, the class size is so small, we're able to find those strengths and those talents and build on them.
Absolutely.
And I think in bigger classes, even at one point in public school, I had 13 in a class, and it was hard to find the individual strengths and skills that those children had because of the things we were working on. Here, our sole purpose is to change the behavior and to make the child the better version of themselves. I think that makes it all worthwhile when they're so excited because other people are commenting on how well they're doing. That's what keeps me going.
Yes. Oh yeah, you can see the little twinkle in their little eyes and those big smiles on their faces, and they just draw you in.
Our next guest is a longtime donor and supporter who shares how he got to know Avondale House and why your continued support matters. Please welcome Terry Gardner.
I was given the opportunity to work with Avondale House by United Way through a project to help people with autism to find employment. They needed to develop a plan in order to get Texas state funding. I helped them do that. I learned a lot about Avondale House and all the wonderful things they do and became a supporter. In working with Avondale House, I learned that people who have autism have certain difficulties. They need people to work with them who understand how to interact with them. Avondale House is very skilled at teaching employers how to relate to people who have autism. I've seen the results that they achieve with the people who live at Avondale House and the others who come there and receive training and therapy. I see how it betters their lives. It betters their sense of self-worth. As wonderful as the services are that they provide, there is more need than their ability to provide the services. So my hope is that as the community supports Avondale House, it will have the resources to be able to grow and expand its residential and non-residential services to the community. I believe that we have the obligation to provide help to all members of our community who need help so that they can lead fulfilling lives.
As Terry mentioned, we have a duty to help our community when they're in need. And one Texas retailer is doing just that. Our next speaker, Director of Public Affairs at HEB, Lisa Helfman.
During the pandemic, we realized that the digital divide was a big issue plaguing our community. So when we heard that Avondale House had a need for digital devices, we wanted to step up to make sure no one was left behind. I think that children face enough issues, and we don't need to make it any more complicated for them. We need to provide them all the resources that we can so they have a great school year. During a regular year, that might be school supplies and a backpack, and we team up with nonprofits across the city to do that. But during a pandemic, when you can't have access to your school, you need to know that you have a resource to reach your teachers in a new way and actually keep learning. HEB is really looking forward to partnering with Avondale House to bring some of their clients into HEB jobs. Everybody wants a life that they can be proud of, that is purpose-driven, that is fulfilling, and everybody should have that opportunity. And at HEB, we want to include everyone in that. Just like we're bridging the gap through our job programs, Avondale House is bridging the gap for these families so they can be productive members of society, and not just the child with a disability, but the family members too. Everyone is taken care of by Avondale House.
More than 2% of adults in the U.S. have been diagnosed with autism, and that number continues to grow each year. Our next guest explains why Avondale House's services remain so critical to people in our community who live with the diagnosis. Please welcome Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner.
It is my pleasure to join you virtually for the From Our House to Yours virtual event presented by Avondale House. Avondale House strives to express the dire needs for quality programs and services for individuals with autism. Autism is becoming more and more prevalent. In fact, the CDC reports that 1 in 54 children have been identified as having autism in the United States. Houston is fortunate to have Avondale House, which serves individuals living with autism from age 3 through their lifetimes. The school at Avondale House serves students from more than 20 local school districts, helping them to achieve their fullest potential with an overarching goal to eventually return to their home school districts if possible. A new supported employment program at Avondale helps any individual living with autism in our community to find a job that provides personal fulfillment and pride in receiving their very own paycheck. I want to give a special shout out to tonight's honored speaker, my good friend, Dr. Peter Hotez. The city of Houston is proud of Dr. Hotez's unwavering commitment to keeping Houstonians and the rest of our country safe and informed during this pandemic. In Houston, we understand that to be the most diverse city in America, everyone needs to have a seat at the table. Avondale House leads by example by empowering individuals with autism to realize their potential in a world in which they are fully integrated. Avondale House relies on the generosity of their supporters to achieve this vision, so please consider donating to their cause. Congratulations to Avondale House for another successful year.
Next, our guest speaker will talk about the impact services like this has made on so many, including his own daughter who has autism. Please welcome internationally known scientist and author of Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism, a book about his journey as a vaccine scientist, pediatrician, and autism dad, Dr. Peter Hotez.
I have 4 adult kids now, and Rachel is 28 years old, and she was diagnosed when I was an assistant professor at Yale. We knew from the beginning that Rachel had some differences compared to the other kids. Around 19 months of age, the pediatrician noticed that there was something quite different about her in terms of delays and developmental milestones, as well as some repetitive behavior. At that time, they called it pervasive developmental disorder. She would often run away, or she would perseverate on certain phrases or words, saying it over and over again. That's actually one of the interesting things about girls and women on the autism spectrum. It's they often tend to be quite verbal, and Rachel was, although she had some speech delays, overall she is pretty verbal to this day, and I think that's one of the reasons why girls and women with autism often get delayed in their diagnosis. So I think we're on a steep learning curve still about girls and women on the autism spectrum. The most amazing story, which I detail in my book called Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism, that I wrote a few years ago, was one of the neighbors' house had a pet entrance, a dog entrance, and she crawled into the house when nobody was home. And we were frantically looking for Rachel, and I remember we were calling the neighbors to see if they had seen her, and we called a neighbor. Her name was Barbara. Rachel answers the phone. I said, "Rachel, what are you doing there?" Get Barbara on the phone. Barbara's not here. And so I said, what do you mean Barbara's not here? Well, then get Kevin. That was her teenage son. Kevin's not here either. Well, who's home with you? Nobody. Well, she was just helping herself in the refrigerator, and we had to call the police and have that discussion. And, so this is this ongoing challenge. And the hard part, of course, is, is progression in terms of school, because she not only has autism, but she has intellectual disabilities as well, and a pretty low functioning IQ. Each time there's a move, you have to, create a whole community around you to manage somebody as complicated as Rachel. One of the organizations that's really helped us enormously is Goodwill Industries. She walks to work, and she's got a community of friends and colleagues because of that. The hard part for us now is coming to terms with what's the long-range plan. Things are better now than when we started with Rachel in terms of special services in schools. A lot of the school districts get it. They understand the importance of early intervention and help with kids in the school. It's when they're out of the school system and they're adults, the bottom kind of falls out. You'll get a call from one of the social workers with the city of Houston or the county, and they do an intake, they take notes, and then they disappear for 6 months. And you wonder, hey, whatever happened to that? You make a phone call and you find out that person's no longer employed by the organization. It just becomes this rabbit hole of unproductive activity, so you get frustrated after a while. Well, what organizations like Avondale House do is they maximize a person's contribution to society. It's one of the few places that offers, safe residential housing for people with special needs. We recognize that it's extremely important for the community. People need support. They call it autism spectrum for a reason. Some individuals are incredibly high functioning and really need minimal assistance or help. People with autism often have associated disabilities, particularly, since we've learned over the years is that autism is a genetic condition. There's at least 100 genes all involved in early fetal brain development that have been identified with an important role in autism, in the autism spectrum. One of the things we did was whole exome sequencing on Rachel and my wife and I at Baylor College of Medicine, and have identified a gene similar to the 100 genes that have been identified by organizations like the Broad Institute at Harvard, MIT, and Baylor Genetics. By having that information, we've been able to identify other physical disabilities for Rachel, including, for instance, a heart condition potentially. So this makes, we know is this makes individuals like Rachel more susceptible to severe illness if she were to get COVID. And it's so I think increasingly we have to recognize how individuals on the autism spectrum likely have a number of comorbidities that make them increasingly susceptible to COVID-19. And so that on that basis, I think it's important that we do prioritize them for getting vaccinated. An organization like Avondale House does the best it can to help stack the deck for individuals with autism and other disabilities to lead the most productive life they can.
Remember, your donation helps Avondale House continue services critical to improving the lives of so many people with autism. So when you give, you're also contributing to a brighter, more hopeful future. And now a final word from Avondale House CEO, Steve Vetrano.
Just about every day, I speak to parents who express their concern about what will happen to their child once they're no longer able to care for them. While we do serve the individuals with autism directly, it's really assisting the families. Avondale House is unique because we are able to care for individuals essentially from childhood through adulthood. But once they graduate, that doesn't mean that services from Avondale House have to end. We're able to provide adult programming during the day, employment services, and we're able to provide long-term residential support. There are very few, if any, other organizations in the Houston area that are able to provide that spectrum of services. Many of the individuals that are in our homes today started with us when they were children in school, 8, 10, 11 years old, and now they're in their 30s and 40s. So this is their home. Avondale House is their family. The support that we provide to them helps them maintain a fulfilling life. It's hard to believe that it's been a year since the pandemic started. We started the employment services program right before the pandemic hit the area. Initially, we were not sure how we were going to be able to continue to do that. We were able to, however, provide some services virtually, but then very safely with precautions in place, we were able to take some of our individuals out into the community to explore the type of work environments that they might like to be in. One of the amazing things about our employment services program was that even in the pandemic, when a lot of things were shut down, we were able to help a client find work. And he was so happy about that, and it was a job that he really wanted to do. And that was a small success, maybe in the big scheme of things, but for us, we felt like that was a huge success. And helping our clients find work helps the greater economy as well, because then they're becoming contributing members of our community. And that's really our goal, is to help our clients reach their full potential. With our employment services, another benefit to an individual finding work is that it takes a bit of pressure off the family if they're able to have some income. And it's money that they have then that they can spend and put back into the economy, or go and do activities. And it's just, there's so many benefits to everybody working. And just because someone has autism or an intellectual disability doesn't mean that they're not able to or they don't want to work. I think if you walk the halls of Avondale House and look at the faces of the students and see the expressions of the adults in our day program and our residents, you'll see a lot of happiness. It's really joyful to see the impact that we're having on these individuals' lives every day. Avondale House is able to provide the quality service that we do, thanks in large part to the supporters that we have in the Houston community. Fundraising is hard, even in regular times, but in this time of COVID, when we're not able to gather in person and talk to each other in person, it's especially difficult. And we are continuing to be in need of support. I hope that by joining us at this event, you've learned a lot more about Avondale House and about autism, and we hope that you would make a gift in support of the individuals we serve. Any gift, large or small, would make a huge impact on the work that we do in helping others develop to their fullest potential. And for that, I'm so grateful. Thank you.
I hope you all feel inspired to help Avondale House continue making a difference for so many people with autism. From our house to yours, thank you for joining us in our virtual event.